Hello everyone, good morning, good afternoon, and good evening. Welcome back. We are now reading part 4 in Power of the Magdalene, written by Stuart Wilson and Joanna Prentis. And part 4, we're focusing on the connections in Glastonbury, which is modern day Avalon in Britain. So that's what this part of the book is titled, but of course we're going to be talking about just a plethora of things. So chapter 19 is titled The Existence of a Bloodline. So remember earlier we did talk about, or they asked Ilariel if Jeshua and Mary Magdalene had children, and he did mention something about a bloodline and it being a really important and interesting question, and that he would come back to it later. So I'm wondering if we're going to learn more about that in chapter 19. And chapter 19 is not very long. It's about 3 pages. And then chapter 20 is a bit longer, so we'll see where we're at time-wise once we're done reading 19, if I'm going to put 19 and 20 together. So chapter 19, the existence of a bloodline. One vital question about Mary Magdalene remained to be answered. We had asked it earlier. It was so important and so central that we were eager to investigate it. But Ilariel had declined to answer at that point. And now we felt it was time to revisit it. Joanna, you said you would return to the question of whether Jeshua and Mary Magdalene had children. Could we ask about this now? Did they have children? And Ilariel says, yes, at least they had one child. Just after the crucifixion, Mary and her 3-year-old daughter left Israel on board of one of Joseph of Arimathea's ships. Her party landed in southern France, then known as Gaul, and she had much help and support there from the Jewish community. Joanna, did Mary Magdalene have any close relatives waiting for her in France? Ilariel, yes, Isaac, the brother of Mariana, had moved to the Languedoc region with his wife Tabitha. They were joined by their daughter, the disciple Sarah, and her husband Philip. By that time, Isaac's brother Jacob had also moved to Languedoc, so there was a complete family network there to support Mary. Joanna, did having all these advanced people settle in one area affect the vibrational levels in Languedoc? And Ilariel says, very much so. Such a gathering of advanced initiates centered around Mary Magdalene, who focused the energy of the sacred feminine, led to the development of an advanced and subtle spiritual culture in that area. The power of the sacred feminine increased in the hearts and minds of the people there, culminating in its expression in the Cathar impulse about 1,200 years after the arrival of Mary Magdalene. And all this began with the arrival of Mary and her extended family group. There was already an established Jewish community in Languedoc when they arrived, so the way was smoothed for them. Joanna, was Mary Magdalene's child called Sarah? And Ilariel says yes and no. Sarah was more of a title than a name, a title acknowledging her special lineage. Her real name was Anna. She was named in honor of Jeshua's grandmother. Comment by Stuart. There is a reference in Lawrence Gardner's book, The Magdalene Legacy, specifically pages 31 and 32, which clarifies this. The author points out that where a name is a distinction, like Sarah, which means princess, it should be hyphenated. And he gives the example of Sarah-Salome. Mary Magdalene's daughter should therefore be called Sarah-Anna. And we have followed this practice in referring to her, so Sarah Anna. The session continues. Joanna, something has been puzzling me. If Jeshua and Mary married during his ministry, how could their daughter have been 3 years old at the time of the crucifixion? Ilariel, the scribes who put the Gospels together focused very much on the period of the 3-year ministry, and sometimes adapted the chronology a little to suit this approach. The wedding at Cana actually took place 5 years before the crucifixion. Joanna, and did a bloodline extend from Sarah Anna? Ilariel says yes, reaching down to the present day. Sarah Anna is the unknown princess of the Western world, just as Mary Magdalene is the unknown queen. They were not concerned about being known because their kingdom was not of this world. Joanna, in any case, Jeshua and Mary Magdalene wouldn't have had children in order to start a dynasty, would they? And Ilariel says, absolutely not. They were working for the kingdom of heaven and had no interest in planting descendants on the throne of Israel or any other throne. To determine whether Jeshua was concerned with the kingdoms of this world, just examine his focus. The Gospels are not political tracts designed to promote the overthrow of Roman authority and the setting up of a Jewish dynasty, but spiritual documents focused on the light. Even when Jeshua was asked whether Jews should pay the Roman taxes, he still managed to turn this into an affirmation of the primacy of God. This is not the answer of a zealot rabble-rouser, intent upon throwing out the Romans and putting his children upon some worldly throne. Comment by Stuart. The biblical reference is to the Gospel of Luke, chapter 20. The session continues. Joanna, if it was never intended that their descendants should form a dynasty, what was their real purpose? Ilariel, they were and are a continuing counterweight to the patriarchal energy that has come to dominate the Western world. The descendants of Mary Magdalene carry the energy of the sacred feminine, with all its potential for balance and healing. The Magdalene lineage has provided a suitable channel through which many of the priestesses of Isis could incarnate, so that the Isis vibrational frequency could continue to serve and bless the earth. From our point of view, this is much more important and beneficial for humanity than any dynasty of kings. Joanna, so there was just one daughter. Ilariel, yes, but the situation here is a little more complex than most people realize. Advanced beings like Jeshua and Mary Magdalene have options that are not available to the average person. Sarah Anna was light conceived, just as Jeshua had been light conceived. Light conception is quite different from either the normal process of conception or from any cloning process. Through light conception, a child of either sex can be created. This is interesting. And this process can provide suitable bodies for advanced souls who have evolved to very high levels. So I think what he's saying was that there was no intercourse. It was created in the same way that Mary had Jesus. It was a conception without the act that usually causes that to happen, or always in most cases. Joanna, you appreciate there has been much speculation about a possible bloodline traced down from Mary Magdalene. Some writers name 3 children, 2 boys and a girl called Tamar. Ilariel, yes, but this was a false trail, carefully constructed to divert attention away from the true bloodline. It was realized from the beginning that any child of Jeshua and Mary Magdalene might be at risk. So an elaborate plan was devised to protect the bloodline. During the period when Mary Magdalene lived in Languedoc, she lived with her daughter Sarah Anna and with 3 children whose father had died. These children were cousins of Jeshua. The eldest was called Tamar Miriam, and then there were 2 boys, Jeshua and Josephus, also called Joses. Mary adopted them in Israel before the crucifixion, adoption being a common practice at that time of high adult mortality. These 3 children had, at the soul level, volunteered to provide a smokescreen, a shield for the true bloodline represented by Sarah Anna. It is a great privilege and a big spiritual opportunity to spend time in a family headed by an advanced being such as Mary Magdalene. And despite the risks involved, there was no shortage of volunteers at the soul level for this task. It was the descendants of these adopted children who eventually became the Merovingian kings. As children of the house of David, they certainly had royal blood, but their bloodline was not quite as special as some people may have supposed. And that's interesting because Jesus talks about this in the Christ letters. He said that they wanted to really make it clear that he was from very closely related to King David, because then that gave him the automatic right to have some kind of a royalty or some kind of connection to the king. But he said that he wasn't closely related, but this made it more attractive for the people that were writing the Bible, for the Jews. It would make him more acceptable. Joanna. Much of the modern speculation about a bloodline focuses on whether there are now descendants of Jeshua and Mary still walking the earth, and what might happen if they announced their presence here. Alariel. It is important to look at the historical context. If these descendants stepped forward in a modern democracy, how would that democracy respond to them? Frankly, we question whether the heir of any ancient bloodline could assume a significant role in a modern democracy. It seems to us that your civilization has progressed too far along the line of individual empowerment for you to put the clock back and be ruled by a series of priest kings in the style of ancient Egypt. That just wouldn't be relevant today. In comparison, the position of Mary Magdalene as the spiritual partner of Jeshua and her role as an empowered and enlightened woman does have real relevance today, and this is what we suggest you focus on. Comment by Stuart. This information opens doors onto a number of new possibilities and enters subtle areas that we did not expect to be able to access. Although we had heard of light conception, it is mentioned in chapter 10 of Anna, grandmother of Jesus by Claire Hartsong. We had no idea of its technical basis. At this point, we were still quite confused about it, and we asked Alariel to explain the principles of light conception. His reply takes us into the next chapter. Okay, so I'm going to leave you all hanging there. And in the next chapter, because it is a longer one and we're already at the 13-minute mark, I will read light conception and DNA, where basically Alariel is going to take us through that whole understanding and possibly more. So we will go ahead and stop right there with chapter 19, and we will pick up on chapter 20 in our next video. Until I see you again, take care of yourselves and take care of those around you. And I love you all very much. I'll see you soon. Bye-bye.